here, and welcome back to my 31 Days of Halloween Review series. And today we're going to be starting off with the George Romero Living Dead franchise review series with the original Night of the Living Dead from 1968.
Welcome to a night of total terror. Night of the Living Dead.
Night of the Living Dead stars Dwayne Jones, Judith O'Dea, Carl Hardman, Keith Wayne, Judith Schreiner, and is directed by George Romero. The plot of Night of the Living Dead is that a desperate group of individuals take refuge in an abandoned house when corpses begin to leave the graveyard in search of fresh human bodies to devour. The pragmatic Ben, portrayed by Dwayne Jones, does his best to control the situation, but when the reanimated bodies surround the house, the other survivors begin to panic, as any semblance of order within the group begins to dissipate. The zombies start to find ways inside, and one by one, the living humans become the prey of the deceased ones. Now, before I get into the rest of this review, I would like to say is, I have seen this movie many times before, and I will say this is kind of an intimidating one to cover, considering it is a very old movie, and it's such a classic movie. There's countless and countless upon reviews out there for this movie, and I think everybody's basically said everything that everybody has thought of in regards to this movie, whether you like the movie or you don't like the movie. So I'm just getting my general thoughts on the movie. This is not going to be like some in-depth review or anything like that, or retrospect / analysis of the movie. There are plenty of channels to do that if that's what you're looking for. So I'm just going to overall talk about my thoughts on this movie. Let's get in, and we'll start off with the things I like about this movie. Here's the thing. There's more things I like about this movie than I dislike. It's a classic for a reason. So, and let's start off with the direction of George Romero, which I believe this was his first ever movie. And for a first film, this is a pretty solid film. I mean, think about it. Like, you're a low-budget filmmaker like George Romero, and you're starting to get into the industry, and your first ever movie is is a classic, like this big classic that people have enjoyed for years, decades even. So, and that's gotta be a huge achievement, especially for your first movie. And honestly, a lot of low-budget indie filmmakers like myself wish to achieve that. We wish to have our first ever movie that we make be like this groundbreaking success that a lot of people love and, is considered classic, Unfortunately, that doesn't happen with a lot of us, but it does happen with some people, and George Romero is one of those people. So, and it has since spawned a franchise, which, I will be honest, I have not seen any of the films that have come out after Night of the Living Dead. I haven't seen Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead, but that's what this review series is intended, intended purpose for, is for me to go and watch the other ones for the first time and eventually talk about them, and at some point I will do a ranking of all of them. By the way, I will also be including the remakes in there as well. The remake of Night of the Living Dead from 1990 by Tom Savini, the 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead by Zack Snyder, and the 2008 remake of Day of the Dead. I will be covering those as well as part of this review series, and eventually doing a ranking of all those movies from the worst to the best. So, in my opinion, of course. What can I talk about this movie that anybody has? I mean, it's amazing. It's an amazing film. I mean, for one, I just okay. One thing that I don't know if somebody has ever talked to you about this movie before is that, in my personal opinion, this is one of those comfort horror movies for me. I could go in and watch it. I could probably fall asleep to it, personally. It's really that comforting for me. I don't know why, it just is. Tell me in the comments below, do you have any horror movies that you feel like is like a comfort movie to you, even so much that you could fall asleep to it and you'd be fine? You know, like, is there like any movies like that? And if so, tell me in the comments below what movie those are. So I would love to hear about that, because I just want to be known that I'm not the only person who's like that with not only this movie but maybe other movies too. So yeah, it's just a very comforting horror movie for me. You know, like if I just want to feel like, I know that's not the intent this movie has, but it's just maybe because of nostalgia and maybe because of the fact that this is a classic movie. A lot of people love it, including myself. Maybe that's why I find comfort in it. I don't know. So, but also too, one of the things I love about these types of movies is, you know, the black and white aesthetic. And I know at the time this was, I mean, color existed around this time. I know color existed back in 1960 when the original Psycho was made. So, in fact, I think Alfred Hitchcock decided not to film Psycho in color. He instead opted to shoot in black and white. And I think, honestly, black and white horror movies, if done well, kind of gives off a different vibe than colored horror movies. Like, gives off a very even more eerie atmosphere, in my opinion. So maybe one of these days I'll do a black and white horror movie. I've always wanted to do one. So maybe one of these days I will do a black and white horror movie. Also too, let's talk about the characters / actors. Mostly the actors. You know, again, people have talked about the characters and out of this movie. But I will talk about one character which is in a negative of mine, so we'll get into that. But in regards to the acting, for the most part, the acting is pretty solid. I would say my favorite actor in this movie is probably okay, so my favorite actor in this is Dwayne Jones as the character Ben. His acting is just really solid. He really sells this whole situation really well in regards to, like, someone, you could tell he's scared. You could tell he's scared, he's frightened by what's going on, but he also has a lot of command, a lot of, like, authority over the situation. He tries to control it as best as he can. And then I also really liked Carl Hardman as Harry. He's not, I wouldn't consider Harry an antagonist, but he's very much, like, antagonistic, especially towards Ben. And they kind of have a bit of a rivalry going on in regards of, like, who's right, who's wrong, and all that stuff. Like, Ben thinks that it's safer to be upstairs and everything like that, you know, because there's more doors and windows, more escape routes, so that if they, like, these ghouls / zombies do try to come in, then they would have an escape route. Whereas Harry believes that the cellar downstairs is the safest place because, you know, there is no other doors. There's only one door, no windows, so they can't get in, and they could board it up pretty well, and it wouldn't be able to get in. So yeah, there's kind of been this tense rivalry between Ben and Harry. So yeah, I really do like those two characters, and I actually like their performances, Dwayne Jones and Carl Hardman. I really do enjoy their performances in this movie. Also, let's talk about the music. The music in this film is iconic. I don't know who composed the music. It might just be royalty-free music for all I know. I'll have to look into that, but the music is really solid. I would love to have a high-quality version of the soundtrack on either CD or vinyl. If there is a remastered version of the soundtrack for the original Night of the Living Dead, and if it's available on CD or vinyl, let me know in the comments below, because I would really like to know so that I could buy it and have it in my collection and be able to listen to the music in this movie, because it is iconic. Also, too, another positive is the pacing of the film. The film clocks in at an hour and 36 minutes, and it feels like that. It is an hour and a half length movie, and you definitely feel that, you know. I think they do a good job, like, for the most part, like, you know, setting up stuff, you know, character development, all that different stuff. Although there's one, again, like I mentioned before, there's one thing I think could have been cut out of the film and nobody would have missed it, but again, we'll talk about that in my negatives. And honestly, for me, that's it with my positives. Now let's move into the things I'm rather mixed on, so let's go into that. And honestly, some of the things I'm rather mixed on is some of the side characters. So you have a few other side characters there. You have Harry Cooper's wife. I believe her name was Helen. And she does some stuff, but she's really just kind of like, you know, just there, you know? And then you have a couple there. Like a man and his girlfriend, Tom and Judy. Like Tom and his girlfriend Judy. And again, they're just kind of there. Really, I mean, they're nice characters, you know, but I don't think anything to write home about. I would say the most iconic side character in this movie is probably Barbara's brother, Johnny, who is in the opening scene, where he's like, they're coming to get you, Barbara, you know, and all that stuff. Like, that's such an iconic line, and that opening scene is such an iconic opening scene, like, so, and therefore that character is pretty iconic as well. So the only thing I'm rather mixed on, so let's move on to my negatives, and I have one. And that is with the character of, speaking of which, the character of Barbara, portrayed by Judith O'Dea. Now, I think she does good in the performance, but the problem is, I just think, honestly, you could cut her character out of the movie completely, and it would not make much of a difference. violence. So, in fact, too, speaking of, like, because for the most part, her character is just in some kind of coma or something like that. I don't really know, some kind of shock, you know? And I get it because her brother was attacked, he may be dead, you know? So she's just kind of in shock of the whole situation. I get it. But I wish she had more to do in this. So, I mean, she could have very well have been a badass final girl in this movie, but they didn't really do that. I would say, honestly, like, a lot of the final girl qualities, I think, were given to Ben, portrayed by Dwayne Jones. Essentially, he's our final guy, essentially, so that's the one thing I would have changed differently if I had made this movie. But also, too, speaking of which, okay, so you have that iconic opening scene, and then once Barbara meets Ben, Ben starts discussing about what happened with him and his encounter with these ghouls/zombies, and how he got to this farmhouse where they're holding up in. So, and then Barbara starts talking about, essentially, she basically repeats just only in words the opening scene. I'm just like, okay, yeah, I get, we've seen that already. You don't have to repeat it, you know? And I think, honestly, and I get it, it was more so to kind of inform Ben of what happened, but not necessarily the audience. But at the same time, too, I think, honestly, that scene probably would have worked better had the opening scene was not shown. Like, if it was a different opening scene, and then it's like, okay, like, maybe if the opening scene focused more on Ben and everything and all that stuff, you know? Or maybe, you know, the scene would have worked better if we just heard what happened with Ben and how he got to the farmhouse and that, and then, you know, just maybe Barbara remained silent or something like that, like she does throughout the movie. You know, just something like that would have worked a lot better. So that's another point against the movie. But honestly, for me, those are my only negatives with Night of the Living Dead. So with that said, I'm going to give Night of the Living Dead a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Again, I would have gave, like, this movie is so close to being a 5 out of 5 for me. If it wasn't for those two things, you know, it would have been a 5 out of 5, personally. But overall, that still doesn't take away the fact that this film is a classic, and it's a classic for a reason. So, and I know this film is in the public domain, because apparently, from my understanding is, it was under a different title originally. I think originally it was under the title Night of the Flesh Eaters, and then turns out there was already a movie with copyright of the title Night of the Flesh Eaters, so they had to change it. But when they changed it to Night of the Living Dead, they forgot to put the copyright on it, so therefore the version of the film we see nowadays is within public domain. So there's been countless distribution of this film from different companies and different people. There's been countless re-edits of this film, extended versions of this movie to like colorized versions of this film where you could watch it in color. So just tons of different stuff. And honestly, with that in mind, with it being the public domain, I thought about maybe doing something with Night of the Living Dead at some point as a filmmaker, like maybe doing my own take on Night of the Living Dead or something like that. I don't know. I thought about it. I know there's been people that said, oh, I would probably do a good job of doing a remake of Night of the Living Dead. Now, do I think I would do a remake of Night of the Living Dead? I don't think so. I don't know. But I would probably at some point do something with Night of the Living Dead, for sure. Because I love this movie, and I would love to, you know, kind of add to the legacy of Night of the Living Dead. So that's it for this review. If you like this video, be sure to hit the like button. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you guys for watching, and they're coming to get you, Barbara.